Well, welcome everybody to our Why Cooperatives webinar with guest speakers from the 51st. My name is Bianca Vasquez, and I am the Program and Lending Director at Beloved Community Incubator. And we're co-hosting the webinar with the 51st team today. So I want to talk a little bit about who is BCI and what's our work. BCI this year, we're celebrating our 10th year. And we got started doing neighborhood listening to people about their workplaces. And folks wanted to talk about their job, their employment, and the way that low wages and unpredictable hours and extractive industries were really impacting their lives, the lives of their children, and their community. And that became the impetus for us to help organize a residential house cleaning cooperative that became Dulce Hogar House Cleaning Cooperative. We, as 2020 began, and we realized at the beginning of the pandemic that if we wanted to maintain these democratic workplaces, both the cleaning cooperative, but the other ones also that existed in our region, that we needed to expand our vision and expand our reach. And so we see ourselves now as a regional solidarity economy organization that centers a livable planet and centers people, especially poor and working class immigrants and people of color, over profit. We know that our current economic system is failing workers and it's failing the planet. And a framework of solidarity economy helps us imagine a different world together. A main way that we do our work, and you can move to the next slide, is by building cooperative workplaces. And so what is a cooperative? A cooperative is a business, any business that is owned by its members. And the members can be tenants who own their building collectively. It can be employees who own their workplace together. It can be members who own a purchasing cooperative and purchase together, or a consumer cooperative like a grocery store, which is a kind of cooperative that lots of people are familiar with. You can go ahead to the next slide. For us, BCI officially is entity neutral around cooperatives, meaning there's lots of different legal structures and ways that people choose to organize cooperative businesses. So some cooperatives are LLCs, some are nonprofit organizations, some localities have cooperative associations or ways to incorporate explicitly as a cooperative. When BCI is thinking about what makes a cooperative, we're thinking about two main distinctions. One is collective governance, meaning that there is an attachment of one member to one vote, and meaning more money can't buy you more decision-making power in the business, and that there are decisions being made collectively. That looks different in every organization and every cooperative, but the collective governance paired with collective finances, meaning shared benefits if the business is very profitable, but also shared risk or liability. The collective governance and collective finances for us are the two main prongs of what makes a cooperative. So no matter what kind of co-op you're looking at, whether it's your favorite co-op grocery store or bookstore or news outlet, what we're looking at is collective decision-making and collective opportunity and collective responsibility around money. You can go ahead to the next slide. And we want to answer the question about why BCI supports cooperatives as a main way of building the solidarity economy in our region. So for us, worker cooperatives are a real alternative to the way the economy is normally structured, which is benefit is supposed to be for a small group of owners at the expense of tenants, workers, and community. Jobs in worker cooperatives tend to be longer term, offer better benefits, have better wages, because profit that would normally be invested or normally be taken from a business for an owner can be reinvested in workers. So this is a main way for us to create community ownership and community benefit. Go ahead to the next slide. We wanted to give two examples of local cooperatives around those two main prongs we talked about. So this is Dulce Hogar, that cleaning cooperative we were talking about, where the owners share that collectively owning their own business means we each have a vote in our business decisions. Go to the next slide. And we wanted to highlight another cooperative in our region, Swamp Rose Cooperative, which does native plants and ecologically friendly landscaping, where workers make between $25 and $35 an hour, which is $10 to $20 more per hour than traditional landscaping businesses. And they have access to profits at the end of the year. So this is the benefit of collective finances that we were discussing just before. You can go to the next slide. One of the main programmatic efforts that we take on at BCI is the BCI network. And I want to shout out, we didn't actually stop and call out the BCI staff that's on the call today, but Kristen Kane is on the call and is our director of network. And we organize a network of cooperatives, solidarity economy projects, and offer shared benefits and shared services. And an opportunity to relate to one another and really weave together an ecosystem of businesses that are trying to do business differently and have our economy be structured differently. So you'll see from some of the logos on here, we have farms and purchasing and consulting. So the cooperative model can exist in many, many different industries. And that is one of the, I think for us, a really exciting opportunity that in many, many industries, it benefits both workers and communities when businesses are collectively owned or collectively stewarded. We'll go on to the next slide. So we are really excited to welcome two workers from the 51st, which is a worker-led newsroom and media organization here in DC. And so we're going to pass the mic. Really, we know y'all are here for Maddie and Abby to get to talk to you about the story and history of the 51st and why they are so inspiring. So we're going to spotlight them. And Maddie and Abby, I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being with us here tonight. Um, my name is Abigail Higgins. I'm the managing editor and a co-founder of the 51st. Um, and I'm going to get us started by talking a little bit about the context in which we started the 51st. Over the past 20 years, 77% of newspaper jobs disappeared. That's the worst job loss of any industry tracked by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Um, Local news has, in many ways, fared the worst. I'm not sure if you can hear my baby screaming, but she's very upset about the loss of local news. So if you can, that's why. Um, yeah, we're averaging a loss of 2.5 local newspapers every single week, which has left a lot of counties across the United States without any newspapers at all, um, or with very, very limited access to local news. There are a lot of reasons why we're losing so much journalism. One of them is big tech, which has gobbled up the advertising revenue that used to support journalism. Um, there, um, there are a lot of different reasons I think that we could sort of trace for the local news crisis. But one of the biggest ones is that journalism has been treated like a business, and has been made to maximize profits, rather than being treated as a public good. At the 51st, we believe that people deserve information, and that's a basic human right, like education and water and healthcare. Um, when we lose local news, there are pretty robust studies about the incredibly devastating effects that they have on communities. Factories that are near newspapers actually produce 30% fewer toxic emissions than similar factories that are not near newspapers. When communities lose local news outlets, companies become more likely to have serious regulatory violations. That's both environmental violations and also labor violations. One study that looked at Cincinnati the year after the Cincinnati Enquirer closed, leaving only one major paper in the city, found that fewer people ran for office, and voter turnout decreased. There was also a study following local news closures in Seattle and Denver, that showed that people's likelihood to volunteer for civic organizations like the PTA dropped significantly. Less local news is also correlated with more government corruption, more government waste, and less spending on public benefits. So here in Washington, D.C., we are not in a news desert, but we have seen really devastating impacts on D.C.'s local news environment. Most recently, the elimination of well over a third of jobs at the Washington Post. So I'll pass it over to Maddie, to talk a little bit more about the local context.
Hi, all. Really excited to be here with you tonight. My name is Maddie Poor. I am the Director of Growth and Engagement at the 51st. And yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got here. So I think you can go to the next slide, Evan. Thank you. Um, so I don't know if how many of you are DC based, but there used to be a local news site called DCist. It had been around since like 2012, 2013, started out as a blog, and then turned into a really robust news site. It was owned by a, it was a part of a family of news sites around the country. There was LAist, there was Gothamist in New York, Chicagoist, and in 2017 the workers there tried to unionize their newsrooms. And as soon as that started, the billionaire owner, Joe Ricketts, evil billionaire name, if I've ever heard one, just shut down all the sites, fired journalists in every city, and shut down those news sites. It was really devastating. And then we saw something really cool happen. Local public radio stations in those respective cities decided to purchase and reinvigorate these local news sites. So in 2017, I was working at WAMU, and WAMU purchased DCist, and we launched it back up with three of the original editors and reporters and built out a membership program for it. I ran DCist membership back in 2018 through 2021. And it was an incredible news site and grew into being a part of a really large newsroom. WAMU and DCS newsrooms ended up kind of being combined in 2020. And there were, I think, 20 plus journalists in the newsroom at one point, which was like very robust for our city. And then February of 2024 comes around, and incredibly abruptly, WAMU decided to pull the plug on DCist, fired 17 workers at WAMU and DCist, including the vast majority of the newsroom. And it was really surprising. And it was done in a pretty horrible way where people were locked out of the office and not allowed to go clean their desks out. And you sort of have the heartbreak of being like, damn, I didn't think public media would do this to us, but here we are. So after that happened, we got together as past workers at WAMU, current workers recently fired, for sort of like a happy morning hour to just get drinks and sort of talk about what had happened. And in that space, I had been really inspired by cooperative news sites, specifically Hellgate in New York and Defector, and had sort of started going up to my past colleagues and said, what if we had a worker-led news site in DC? What would that look like? What would that look like? And enough people were curious and decided to get on a Zoom call a few days later. And we talked about it, what it could look like, and then decided, you know what, like, let's give it a shot. We sent around a Google survey that assessed people's capacity and their interest. And people who said, okay, I'm really excited and I can give about 10 hours a week for a few months to this idea, we started meeting. So we met 2 times a week for about 3 months, a group of about 7 of us, and plotted out what this could look like, what we would want it to be, really feeling like there's a possibility in a new model, but we also knew it really comes down to, is this financially viable? We knew it's a huge privilege to be able to work unpaid. And for many of us, that was only a reality for a short runway. And so to see if this thing could really, really exist, we knew we needed to launch a crowdfunding campaign, which is what we did. In July of 2024, we launched a crowdfunding campaign and we were blown away. We saw over $100,000 donated in one day. Our first day, we passed that threshold, and it was sort of like we had been planning this as a team. I think most of us thinking this is really pie in the sky. Like, this is cool. We wish this could happen, but it's probably not going to happen. And we're going to like tend to lick our wounds and be like a little disappointed. But after that first day when we hit 100K, we were like, oh shit, now we really need to do this thing. This is happening. So yeah, we ran a successful crowdfunding campaign and raised over $275,000, which gave us enough of a runway to begin publishing and get us through the end of 2024 into the beginning of 2025 and to start paying people for their work. And we knew with that runway, we needed to launch a membership program and get sustaining revenue coming in. All right, Evan, if you want to go to the next slide. So the thing that really fueled us, I'd say, as a team was this desire and belief that like this could be so much better. Like we knew the model that we were working in wasn't working. And specifically, it wasn't working because of how journalists and workers in the industry were being treated. There is such a expectation of burnout and hustle culture. I mean, in so many industries, but journalism, it's really, really pervasive. And also just this idea that there's so few jobs, you're lucky to have one, and therefore you're going to have to put up with abuse and poor treatment. And we all, I think, had been burned in different workplaces or another and wanted to be like, okay, the work that we're doing and the output for the community is really important, but also the way that we do it and the way we build this business feels really important. And a cooperative model felt like it would allow us to build something different where we all were had a say and got to make these decisions collectively. So really that looked like in the very beginning, like making sure we were each taking turns in building the agenda and facilitating our meetings to plan things, and really a big openness around feedback and how we are planning to do this and really valuing everyone's expertise. So knowing that how we do the work is just as important as the work that we are doing. Um, all right. Okay. So one more, I was like peeking at the doc. The other thing that we really believed is with the shifting of journalism as a business, where the ideal outcome is to bring in large profits and make shareholders happy, reframing it as a public service, something that is a benefit to the community, something that is valuable for readers, that means we're beholden to that community, to readers. They are our big bosses. And that means doing journalism in a more circular way. So, journalism coming down on high, where the authority figure is reporting on you, being like, no, 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 we're part of this community. We're leveraging these expertise and platform to work with you. Like, what are the problems you're having? What information are you not getting? What sus things keep happening that you think someone should look into? And so speaking to people in DC and really understanding what they wanted to see from local news, what would be beneficial, was one of the first things we did. The background of this slide is our threefold science fair board and post-its we popped up in every ward of the city before we launched our newsroom, just asking the question, what do you want from local news? And we heard from thousands of residents, and we took those post-it notes and I data entered them into a spreadsheet, and we looked at a pie chart of, oh, people are really wanting local politics stories and transportation stories, and people really want to see the mayor held accountable for things. And we had just a wealth of knowledge and understanding from people in the community who were excited to donate and support and make this thing possible, and also had expectations and wants and desires from us that we wanted to deliver on. So really shaping how we're doing the work as an organization, but also how the journalism is being done. And there are a ton of examples in the journalism world now of newsrooms really shifting and doing that engagement and reader first reporting. So we're learning from so many and really inspired by so many models. But yeah, that is sort of setting up how we're thinking about it. And now, Abby, if you want to talk about some of the reporting that we've done.
Yeah, thanks, Maddie. Um, so we've done a lot of thinking about, as Maddie described, what we think the role of local journalism should be, and specifically how the 51st can participate in DC's local news ecosystem. And we believe really strongly that local journalism should make people's lives better. And so as a result of that, we focus on stories that hold our leaders and public officials to account. We try to demystify opaque city and civic processes, and also celebrate the idiosyncrasies that make us all really proud to call DC home. We try to do a lot of what is called service journalism. An explainer about, for example, what to do when you get an eviction notice. What are the resources that are available to you? Who can you call? What are the steps to take? And what are the steps to be careful not to take? Another example is what to do if ICE is at your door. We wrote that explainer well before our current crisis, and it's sadly and obviously only become more relevant since we published it. We also try to, like I said, write articles that hold leaders to account. One of the larger investigations that we're really proud of was an investigation into DC's opioid crisis, um, which was also a partnership with the New York Times, the Baltimore Banner, and a series of local publications across the country. All of them partnered together on a very large data set that basically showed that in all of these cities, including Washington, D.C., Black men in their mid 50s to mid 70s accounted for nearly 38% of opioid fatalities. and in DC, while only making up about 4% of DC's total population. So just finding that older Black men made up a dramatically disproportionate amount of opioid deaths. And despite that, in Washington, D.C., like a lot of cities across the county, there was no specific programming to support that population. Um, so we published an investigation into the city's failures to address this crisis, and also did it in partnership with a series of local newsrooms across the country. Partnerships in journalism are really, really important to us. There are too few journalists and too many stories to tell. We've also prioritized that locally. We partner with El Tiempo Latino to publish some of our articles into Spanish and have them publish those. We also partner with Ethiopique, which is an Amharic language newspaper, to publish some of our work in Amharic. I'm thinking about whether I'll mention one other investigation that we did more recently, which was into the record eviction levels that DC residents are facing. And we told that story in partnership with Street Sense Media, which is a publication that specializes on housing and homelessness. And also with the investigative reporting workshop at American University. I'll pass it over to you, Maddie.
Thanks, Abby. All right, next slide. Evan, thank you. So we also know that people love knowing about really cool people and places that they frequent in DC. So we are also really proud of some stories. Just a few that I'm going to highlight. One is highlighting Marcus, a lifeguard at Banneker Pool. If you've ever frequented Banneker, you know the tunes are always great. And the question had come up multiple times of like, who is this lifeguard and why are the vibes so good? And so we worked with a local reporter and one of our favorite local photographers to go and profile Marcus. And it was a really, really beautiful story that so many people, the comments were just filled with like, oh my God, I love Marcus. And that was just such a like, the specificity that local news has like can't be replicated. And so it's been really fun to do more and more stories like that. We also highlighted the Street Astronomy Club in Mount Pleasant, including Gael, who is this incredible 19-year-old who builds his own telescopes and has such a passion for bringing people in and teaching them about astronomy. And he also, this was a story that we had planned, and then it became really relevant to a news activity because he and his family are Venezuelan, and all of a sudden their ability to stay in DC was being threatened with Trump's changes to TPS. And so we had worked with one of our freelancers, Sam Delgado, to report on that and tell like a really nuanced and powerful local story. So getting to hear from and see what our readers are talking about and excited about and assign stories based on that has been really cool. And also valuing doing things like U Street. So we have a weekly-ish call out where we something that we're wondering internally or something that we're starting to see conversations around in the community, we'll pose the question to our readers. One that we did really recently is on our new affordability series, just trying to understand like what bills are causing you the most stress these days, where's your money going, just to get an understanding of where our readers are at. So things like that have felt really cool to be able to be prioritizing. Um, and we also, in doing that, have wanted to make sure we're reaching communities that DCists and other news sites historically weren't doing a good job of reaching, which is why we launched our Community Connector program, which Abby's going to talk about.
I think next slide, please. Thank you. So yeah, as Maddie said, It's really, really important for us to think critically about the fact that we need to save local journalism and we need to rebuild local journalism. But we also need to acknowledge that local journalism has not always played a positive role, and in fact, has played very negative roles throughout history. Local journalism has played roles in fanning racist crime panics. Local journalism has misrepresented and misreported on communities of color and low-income folks, and has often played a significant role upholding narratives of the powerful. Um, so it's really important to us to make sure that as we are building new alternatives, we're also building better alternatives that don't replicate the same harms of the past. Um, One of the ways that we really want to do that is by making sure that journalism is a little bit more circular. Journalism isn't just top down, where the journalists are telling community members what the stories are, but that journalists are in direct conversation with communities, and are hearing from them about what they believe are important stories in their community, what questions they want answered, what stories they want told, and what their frustrations are about how their community has been represented in the media, and potentially misrepresented. Um, and so one of the interventions that we developed at the 51st is what we call our Community Connector program. And Community Connectors' jobs are not primarily to produce journalism, but primarily to be in direct conversation with communities who have been often misrepresented or underrepresented by local news, and bringing the conversations from those communities directly into our newsroom. So currently we have a Ward 7 community connector, which is George, who is in this picture. And we also have a DC Natives Community Connector, who has a really beautiful quote here, that um, I'll read it. I recognize the need for people like me, Black DC natives, to be represented in news media, but I never viewed myself as worthy of space in the newsroom. I was a guest, valued for the moment, but real news was to be handled by the professionals. I never felt educated enough to run with journalists. Um, so Dwayne and George and two additional community connectors that we've brought on since then do a variety of kinds of community outreach. They post up at farmers markets, at libraries, outside of grocery stores, at events throughout the city, and have conversations with residents about what they want to see from local news and what they are frustrated by in local news. They have also been a part of founding and planning some really fun events. Dwayne regularly hosts Ask a DC Native, which is a sort of like game show style competition between DC natives, and has like DC and 51st base trivia. And I think that also highlights something that's really important about the Community Connector program, is that it helps break us out of the algorithms that we're all trapped in, and that our news and information is trapped in. And it helps us get physically out into communities and directly in conversation with each other, which is a really hard thing to do these days. I think it is back to you, Maddie, and next slide.
Yeah, those are
Oh,
some
wait,
cute
actually,
addition. Do you want to do that one?
yeah, sorry, I forgot.
No
There's
worries.
the second half of Dwayne's quote, which is really beautiful. Um, I finally got to see myself as more than a guest in the news space. I am an example that district residents, especially DC natives, belong in these spaces. Our stories are important, and we should be the people telling them. Newsrooms across the country are beside us, figuring things out, and we can learn from each other's experiences. Thanks. Now over to you, Maddie.
Thanks, Abby. All right, so now the funding part of this equation, which has been a journey to figure out. We know that the traditional funding models are no longer feasible. And so, what we have to look to is, because we're providing value to our community, counting on our community to support us. And so we have been really fortunate that the DC community is incredibly passionate and eager to support local journalism. People in DC really know and see the value of having independent, accessible information available. They were very, very upset when DCist was shut down, and our neighbors have continued to be upset when Jeff Bezos does something stupid at the Washington Post, which he has done many times over and over in the last few years. And it's unfortunate. Our best fundraising days have been the days that Jeff Bezos has done things like pull the Kamala endorsement, or recently when he fired over 300 journalists at the Washington Post in the beginning of February. We saw our largest fundraising day ever and brought in 700 new paying members over 3 days. But yeah, our funding is largely made up by individuals. I think last time I looked, it was about 67% is from our subscriber base and individual donors. We also are a nonprofit. And if you're wondering, a cooperative nonprofit, that is because we are a worker self-directed nonprofit. So we're not actually worker owned. We have a worker board, but no one owns us because we are a part of the community and a nonprofit organization. So we also apply for grants and know that philanthropy and major donors do play a role in building this local news as a public good and a public service. We also have advertising and sponsorships and work with a lot of cool local businesses to run ads on uh, our site, but not the like spammy pop-up, it's really hard to read this style ads, which is something I always value when on our site versus trying to read news in so many other places. Um, we're really fortunate that the percentage of people who join as paying subscribers continues to be about a third of our subscribers. So as we grow in readership, we also grow in people who are paying to read the work. Our membership starts at $10 a month or $120 a year. And then there's two other levels of support. But the vast majority of people are paying that starting level. I think we are seeing a shift in understanding of people feeling like, oh, I need to be paying for my news consumption. But I also think that we're in the baby stages of journalists feeling comfortable asking for that financial support. And that's something I feel really passionate about, that it's not just a palm out. It is really inviting people in to be a part of building and growing something that's really important for the community. And so, local news fundraising is something that I could talk for a very long time about. And also, I'm always happy to answer questions. But we have done a combination of running crowdfunding campaigns when we have a specific goal in mind. So we hired our first full-time reporter, Martin Ostermule, who's a very seasoned and beloved local DC reporter. We ran a specific crowdfunding campaign to hire him and our executive editor, Christina. And that was a one-time sort of donation crowdfunding campaign. And we have seen success in that, along with making sure we're mentioning and encouraging people to join as paying subscribers alongside that. So there's sort of multiple routes for bringing in individual reader support. I think that covers everything. Oh, the one other thing I wanted to say on funding is something that we are seeing nationally is a conversation around the role that government support plays in funding local news. And we are seeing bills introduced across the country, including one in DC that Janice Lewis George introduced in 2020, 2024, I want to say, that would give sort of news vouchers. So every person registered to vote in DC would also have news vouchers that they would vote with and put towards a local news institution. So that takes just a tiny sliver of our taxes and puts them towards local journalism. I think it was going to be a pot of about $11 million, which would make a huge impact on local journalism, but wouldn't actually be a very large portion of our state taxes to begin with. I think it was like 0.01%. So there are policy solutions being introduced because we know that this is the sort of public good needs to be funded as such. And I think we're in the early stages of that. But I'd recommend checking out the Rebuild Local News if you're not DC based and you're looking to see if you have any policy solutions in your area. That is my final note on funding. Back to you, Abby.
Thanks, Maddie. We can go to the next slide. So Maddie already mentioned a bit of this, but there is a really exciting growing movement of worker-run or worker-led newsrooms across the country. There is a publication called The Range in actually, let's see, I'll get to that in a second. I think it's the next slide. And I actually saw someone ask in the chat whether worker-run newsrooms are in conversation with each other and whether we're collaborating. And the answer is definitely yes. There is a strong informal network. When we started, we spoke to Hellgate in New York. We spoke to The Range in Washington State. We spoke to The Appeal, which is a worker-run nonprofit that covers the criminal justice system. And generally, which I think is true across cooperative spaces, people who are in the cooperative news space are really passionate about helping other people create more alternative worker-friendly newsrooms. So I definitely don't think that we could have done what we did without having conversations with those other newsrooms. And we continue to be in conversation with those newsrooms as we all sort of start to figure out, what are some of the difficult challenges of scaling and, as you sort of start to develop your democratic decision-making processes, which can often be really hard in a newsroom, which sometimes has to move quickly. So yeah, and I think the amount of time that a lot of leaders in cooperative newsrooms spent talking to other cooperative newsrooms or to other people who were interested in potentially starting a cooperative newsroom meant that actually Start.coop and Defector received a Press Forward grant, which are grants for philanthropic grants for local news solutions, to build a shared media services hub for worker-friendly news organizations. So they are getting started. They're sort of in the early stages, but we'll be rolling things out, I think over the next year. And there's some really exciting conversations that are happening about what would it look like for cooperative newsrooms to all have a shared bookkeeping service? What would it look like to have shared legal services? What would it look like to be able to all pay in to support a graphic designer? There are just a lot of things that you have access to as a large, well-funded corporate newsroom that are really hard to afford as small worker-run cooperatives. But when we join together, we can potentially help build and access those shared services. So I think there's some really still relatively early stages, but really exciting conversations about how we can scale cooperative newsrooms across the country. Powering News is also a really fantastic resource that is available. I also saw someone ask in the chat what advice we would have for people who want to potentially start a worker-friendly newsroom. Powering News is a great place to start. Tara Francis Chan interviewed a bunch of newsroom leaders, including Maddie and I, about sort of like the challenges of building a cooperative newsroom, the lessons learned and that kind of stuff, and compiled them into this really useful resource. So I think as much as we all want to continue to be in conversation with each other and be consulting each other moving forward, we also hope that there will be more easily accessible robust resources so that more and more people can do this. Um, this is also this screenshot journalism co-op seem utopian. What's it like working in one? Is a really great Columbia Journalism Review article that's sort of peeking inside the newsrooms of some of these cooperatives and talking through some of the challenges and opportunities of this kind of a workplace. I would recommend it. All right, next slide. Yeah, so this is the slide I was looking for. This is a fantastic slide with a bunch of different examples of worker-run or worker-known newsrooms across the country. Just to highlight a few, 404 Media is a phenomenal collective of journalists who are breaking stories left and right about technology and government. If you are concerned about artificial intelligence, contemporary politics. Their work is really great to follow. The Flytrap is a feminist media collective. They are funny and snarky and also like covering very real and serious issues in a creative way. Defector is sort of like the OG mother of cooperative newsrooms, of the modern cooperative newsroom movement. They cover sports and culture. They have great podcasts. I would highly recommend them. Maddie, are there any others that we should shout out?
Did you say Coyote already?
I didn't say Coyote.
Okay. I'm a huge fan of Coyote. They are in the Bay Area and just doing really, really incredible, like alt weekly style reporting. Yeah, I just shout them out.
Yeah, agreed. And we mentioned Hellgate. Hellgate is doing great reporting in New York, and our older siblings, if I'm gonna continue this familial narrative. All right, next slide. Okay, challenges. I think Maddie and I are kind of gonna tag team this one. Maddie, do you want to talk about the funding challenges maybe to start?
Totally. Yeah. So funding. I mean, if you want to launch with a robust local newsroom, probably not going to be able to do that just with membership alone. We have had to grow pretty slowly and sustainably, but we just last year brought on two full-time paid workers, and then this year brought on two more, and are fundraising to bring on two more, but still a very small team for what a local newsroom is. So that looks like we know we're going to have to be finding some more major donors and foundations to be getting funded through as we grow into being the size newsroom that DC truly deserves. And with that comes with some skepticism, especially in the funding space. I feel like almost every foundation and funder I have met with has said some version of, okay, but like, can you explain the cooperative thing? Like, how does that actually work? There's some real skepticism around, like, does that work? I have heard, nah, things like that never work. And I think there is just a lack of information and comfortability around this idea. um, it's true. We are newer in figuring out this model, but we also really believe doing this model and doing it differently is for a reason. And also feel like there's a ton of learnings to be had. And like Abby pointed to on the previous slides, there are a lot of people doing that research and learnings. And also, other places around the world have had cooperative newsrooms for decades. So I think it's new in our country, but not as a concept in general. And then Abby, do you want to talk about hierarchical decision makings in a newsroom?
Yeah. I'll also just add, I always think it's so rich when people can so confidently say that cooperative newsrooms don't work. And while we are operating in a context where we're losing 2.5 local newspapers every single week, and we're seeing billionaires destroy publications like the Washington Post, I think it's very clear what's not working in journalism. And it's not clear to me that it is cooperatives that are not working anyway. And I think that could be said of, many industries other than journalism. So I think it is a struggle that is common to cooperatives of sort of like, how do you make sure that you are making decisions in a democratic and equitable way that people feel like they can participate in? But also, how do you move quickly and make sure that decisions like do get made? Um, and I think particularly in a newsroom, inherently the news moves fast. Um, and you sometimes have to respond to things that are unfolding quickly. You also have to you have to make decisions about who is writing a particular article, like who has the right skill set to carry an article out. You have to make difficult decisions. Journalism carries a lot of legal risks. You have to make difficult decisions about whether additional steps need to be taken for legal protections. You sometimes have to make complicated decisions about whether an article is done, whether you have all of the information that you need to have to absolutely verify the claim that you are making. Has the article been fact checked sufficiently? There are just like a lot of decisions that need to get made that can pretty easily get stymied by too many people participating in them. And we've gotten a lot of advice from other journalism cooperatives that it is very important to have a cooperative business, but you do sometimes still need to have a hierarchical newsroom. Um, but that you can also build hierarchies. Maybe hierarchies isn't the best word for it. But you can still have clear decisions making structures that don't have to be as oppressive as hierarchical newsrooms typically are. Um, you can, yeah, but I think that is still like a challenging thing to figure out. And I think it's a thing that like we are constantly iterating on and sort of thinking through like on a very regular basis. We're kind of like, wait, actually, I don't think 9 people need to be making this decision. And then also sometimes we're like, wait, 2 people shouldn't have made that decision, like, or one person shouldn't have made that decision. And like, it is a constant sort of back and forth of like who needs to, and it's also hard as like a rapidly growing organization, right? So we can sort of like have our decision-making structures feel pretty clear for 4 people, and then we grow to 7 people. And what does that mean? So I think it's like, it can be overwhelming and it can be difficult to figure out. But I think these challenges are also really exciting. I remember something that Bianca and Jeff both said to us at the very beginning when we were sort of talking to them about how to structure stuff. And they were kind of like, the good news and the bad news is that you can build this however you want. Like, this is your newsroom and this is your cooperative, and you get to structure it how you want to. And that is really exciting. And it's also really overwhelming. And I think we keep coming back to that of just being like that is like the power of a cooperative. And it's also the challenge of a cooperative. And I think that's it from us, Maddie, right?
Yeah, I think we're opening it up to questions now.
Yes. So we were gathering your questions in the chat the whole time that we were going. And Evan, I think we'll pause the screen share for now. And I first want to ask, I have a couple of questions that I am taking facilitator like prerogative to ask, as well as questions from Josh and Anna. And we're going to ask all of the questions, even if they were already answered in the chat, so that they exist for the recording for later. Because if we have the question, someone who registered for the webinar to get the recording will also have that question. So my first question for you all is, you named pretty quickly some of the communities of learning or communities of praxis that you are a part of, or the 51st is a part of. Can you just name some of those again and highlight some of the communities of learning that you're a part of?
Sure. I am happy to take a swing at that. And Abby, let me know if I'm forgetting any. So obviously BCI, and you were huge in getting us started in this and continue to be. We also are a part of Tiny News Collective, which helps incubate small startup newsrooms. And we also have been involved in the conversations with Start.coop, and their Press Forward grant that they're working on in partnership with Jasper from Defector. And then also the Powering News project that Tara from The Appeal has been working on. Abby, am I forgetting any?
Two others are the Institute for Nonprofit News, which yeah, has a lot of great resources for newsrooms and journalists, but is also a cool place to look if you're sort of looking in addition to the list of worker-run outlets that we shared. They have a really great network of nonprofit newsrooms if you're sort of looking to like build out your alternative newsroom news digest. Um, and the other one that I wanted to mention, oh, is the United States Federation for Worker Co-ops. They've also been a great support to us, and have provided a lot of resources.
I'll also say Lawyers for Reporters is another good one.
So what we'll do when we send out the recap of this is we will capture those and have a little resources section of the communities of learning that have supported 51st in their growth. I'm going to ask another specific question, because one of the things of building a cooperative or any democratic organization is you have to be skilled in the good or service you are providing. And then you are also building your skills of being a cooperative and being a democratic workplace together. And so I just want to ask you all to highlight, this is a little self-serving for BCI, but to highlight like what are some of the kinds of cooperative specific accompaniment or trainings or supports that have been helpful to the 51st team, because I think sometimes people struggle to imagine like what that kind of training or support might look like.
Do you want me to start that, Maddie, and then you can jump off what I said? Um, oh my gosh, I can't express how incredibly helpful BCI has continued to be as we have built up and when we were like first launching this. I think there are just like so many things that I think BCI was really good at realizing like what we needed support on before we even realized what we needed support on. I think when you're doing something like this, you're often just like it's really, it can be really hard to know how to start. And it can also feel like even when you are in community with other cooperatives, because there are still relatively few of them compared to the sort of like variety of more traditional for-profit models or more traditional nonprofit models. It can also feel sometimes like you're the first one trying to figure out some of these issues. So I remember one thing early on is that we I think a lot of traditional legal advice can be pretty either anti-cooperative or can just like not understand cooperatives and can sort of assume that by structuring on a cooperative model, you're going to like incur unbelievable amounts of legal risk. And that's really scary when you're sort of like a bunch of individual like freelance journalists and people who are like precariously employed. The idea of like getting sued into oblivion was really scary. And BCI provided like incredible support on just like offering us legal advice of sort of like how do we do this carefully and thoughtfully and make sure that we're like protecting ourselves. And also like building an organization that will continue to protect itself. I think also like as we've sort of as we've developed our democratic decision-making models, these sort of like questions that I was outlining before of just sort of like who should be part of which decisions when, BCI has been a great resource, sort of thinking through here are some of the ways that other people have done it. Like here's some potential models. Here's some of the things that you want to be really careful about avoiding. Um, let's see, there was one other thing I was going to say. Oh, also in sort of like developing as related to that, like as we've been developing our worker manual, and really, you know, sort of making sure that we're documenting the structures that we're building, and again, making sure that we're sort of like that we're building legally sound structures, but also like socially and personally sound structures. Like how do we build structures that are going to support the individuals who are involved in our organization and also the mission of our organization, which would be in a worker manual, that kind of stuff. What did I miss, Maddie?
Yeah, no, that's all so spot on. The other things that are coming to mind, I think, is being a connector of cooperatives. So, sort of introducing us to other cooperatives and resource supports, and also just co-ops in the community we've done a lot of network calls and even like gotten story ideas through network calls and things like that. And then finally, I'd say access to non-extractive capital, a thing that I didn't even know could exist. And upon learning about it, felt like a huge possibility of like what the world could be crack open inside me of like, oh, you could access capital to grow your business, and it's not going to mean that you're like everything could get taken away if something were to happen and you weren't able, you know? So Bianca being our lending partner and connector to Seed Commons. We're the first nonprofit newsroom that Seed Commons has ever funded, and it allowed us to bring on myself and my other teammate, Eric Falcaro, as full-time employees to build out our fundraising and business side of the operation. And yeah, that has been a huge, huge help.
Beautiful. Thank you. I just wanted people to have a sense of like what are the specific kinds of support that might exist for democratic workplaces. And you all did a beautiful job of highlighting that. I'm now going to shift us into some of the questions from the chat. So the first question is, what is the actual media structure for the 51st like? Do you print? Is your primary engagement digital? And do you do anything with audio stories or video stories?
Yeah, we are primarily and currently entirely a digital publication, although we have produced a few zines. We have a weekly newsletter that comes out on Thursdays, and that has the bulk of our news stories in it. You can subscribe on our website. We like communicating through a newsletter and an email format because it's a way for us to be most directly in conversation with readers and therefore not relying on social media algorithms. But you can also get our news on Blue Sky and on Instagram and on X. If you want to go there, I wouldn't highly recommend it. Um, and then we also publish some articles outside of our Thursday newsletters. We're very excited about the prospect of having a print product. We will probably never have like a daily or a weekly or probably even a monthly print product. That's just really time intensive and resource intensive to produce something like that. But we know that there is a lot of joy in a physical thing that you can touch and something tactile that you can flip through or that you can have, on your coffee table. So we're really excited about the idea of sort of like maybe, publishing a like best of the 51st or sort of like an annual highlight or something like that. We're still thinking about it. And we do try to do pretty regular zines. Maddie, what are a couple examples of the zines that we've done so far?
Yeah, we have done some zines that are a part of our DC Explained series, so sort of answering how to service journalism style questions. So we did one that was what to do if your heat or air conditioning isn't working and you're a renter, sort of like what your legal protections are and what the steps are in that process. And we also, one of our community connectors, George, is an incredible illustrator, and he illustrated a really beautiful zine that we're in the process of getting printed so we can start distributing it about the ice skating club in Ward 7. And that is gorgeous and filled with his illustrations. Yeah, hoping to do more zines in the future.
Love it.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll also just quickly say sorry that we just started
Okay.
experimenting with like short form videos on Instagram. So we've done a handful of them so far. And yeah, they're like a really great. I think we all want to experiment with as many ways of like getting information out as possible. And short form videos are the most accessible way for a lot of like folks to get the news. So they are also like, every single different medium of journalism takes a particular skill set and takes particular equipment and a significant amount of time. So we do try to be careful. We aren't doing any audio stories yet. We don't have any plans to in the near term. We do really want to be thoughtful about not trying to do everything and not trying to be everything for everyone, but really making sure that what we do, we can do it well. So we're interested in experimenting on different platforms, but we also like want to, be cautious about not spreading ourselves too thin.
Another question I have is around, do you take grants or donations to cover specific stories, specific kinds of stories? How do you um, separate or manage sort of the editorial independence piece of this with being sort of community and donor funded?
Do you want me to start with that, Maddie? Cool. Yeah, it's a great question. And it's definitely a complicated one in journalism. I think the most straightforward answer is that we are always interested in and excited about taking grants to cover topic areas. So if a philanthropic organization said we really want to see more housing reporting in DC, could we give you this grant to do housing reporting? Or could we give you this grant to hire a full-time housing reporter? That's something we'd be really excited about. But you also have to be really careful and very clear in journalism. That doesn't mean that the person who is giving the grant can dictate the coverage in any way. So if they said, we want you to like, I don't know, investigate this specific landlord, or I really want you to tell a story that is going to show that this city program isn't working. that is not money that we would accept, or that is not like an expectation that would be fair of a newsroom, because journalistic editorial independence is really important. And honestly, it can be really a hard thing about funding journalism, because wealthy people often want to give money to see specific things done. So it can sometimes be a hard sell to say, we definitely want your money to do journalism, but you can't actually have a say in what reporting that we do with it. But we still hope that people believe in sort of like the overall mission of journalism enough to commit those funds anyway.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll add to that is we occasionally do apply for funding for stories that we already know we're working on. So DC has an organization called Spotlight DC. They fund investigative and accountability reporting in DC. So if we're ever working on a story that has an accountability component or an investigative component, we will write out a pitch and explain that. And then Spotlight has granted and funded quite a few stories for us. So that is another way stories get specifically funded.
And with our last couple of minutes for questions, I imagine there are people who are here today and who will be watching this later that maybe want to create their own local news outlet, in whatever form that might take. And so I think we want to just ask, do you have any tips for people who want to create a worker-led, worker-friendly local newsroom where they are? So I'll just leave these kind of last words to y'all.
I'm happy to go first. Um, I think knowing that it will be a lot of work, like there's a lot that goes into doing this. And so making sure you're doing it in a way that is enjoyable. I think anytime things start feeling like, it's like a reminder, like, no, we're doing this, we're opting in and choosing to do this. So what needs to change? And so also doing it with people you really, really enjoy being around and respect and think are brilliant, and having a lot of trust in each other and being really honest with each other when things feel hard or aren't quite working, and knowing that you're on the same team and like wanting to solve it together is like a really huge component, because like it's inevitable that like conflict will happen and things won't like be working at some points, and it's like, no, we're on the same team, we got to steer the ship together. How do we like write the course or better understand each other? And I feel like a really cool experience is like anytime something has felt off and I've brought it to the team and we've talked about it together, I've like left that conversation feeling so much better and like grounded in why we're doing this. And that feels really, really like cool and lucky to do. So yeah, uh, doing it with people you like, I'd say is key.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And I completely agree. And feel really lucky to be doing this with the team that we're doing it with. I think also doing it in broader community. So like in community with folks like BCI, and other cooperatives and like other cooperative networks who are trying to do this work. I think it's challenging to do alone, and having other people to reach out to. The a lot of the networks that we've mentioned tonight, I would, yeah, absolutely take advantage of. Um, I would really try to not recreate a lot of the oppressive work structures that you're creating a cooperative to try and escape. I think it can be really easy, especially when you're doing mission-driven work, and work that you really believe in and that you really care about, to burn yourself out. And I feel really appreciative that our team from the very beginning, like really had a commitment to create something different, and know that we wanted to create a cooperative because we wanted to have like full lives outside of our work, and because we wanted to feel like full human beings, as well as journalists and workers. Um, so I think really keeping that in mind, I think it's like okay to sort of have like an initial startup phase where you're sort of like doing everything all the time, but yeah, exactly. But trying to not have that startup phase be forever. And yeah, I think as Maddie said, it's like it's not a decision to take lightly. It is a lot of work and it's a lot of really hard work. But it's also really beautiful work. And it's a really, really wonderful thing to be able to be a part of. And I think we're all trying to figure out how to live in a really, really scary world right now, and sort of figure out how to continue amidst so much system collapse. And I have found that it has been one of the best things for my mental health and my like continued hope for the future to be building something new and to be building something better. And I can sustain much better in a world with so much destruction and sadness to be a part of trying to build something better out of the wreckage, and to be in community with other people who are doing the same.
Well, I want to invite all of us to put some words of appreciation in the chat for Abby and Maddie for sharing, honestly, so generously with all of us, sharing both the practical but the emotional and all the different aspects of what it means to start something up, and really fight for our local news to be a public good. And you all have been so clear about that framing and that belief from the beginning. It's a really powerful vision. Um, we just have a couple of minutes, and I know some of you all are going to be feeling inspired and say, okay, so like, what do I do? So if you're local to DC, we want to give you a couple of options to connect with us and to connect with other local projects in the region. So Evan, if you can pull back up the slide share, thank you. So the first is that on March 28th on Saturday, we're having a Solidarity Economy social hour at Bowl Bookstore. So one of the local cooperatives in our network. The link to register will go into our Eventbrite, but it's a really casual and informal time to come and learn about Bowl, but about other co-ops in the region. And it's a really wide range of people. So we really invite you all to come be with us. And we host those quarterly. And we often try to spotlight different cooperatives or different values aligned businesses in that. We can go to the next slide. Then on April 11th, we are taking a cohort of people from our region, from the DMV, to go to Bread Jumpstart. Bread is the Baltimore Roundtable for Economic Democracy, and they are our sister organization in Baltimore. And they host this day-long training every year. That's good for if you are someone trying to sell your business, if you're trying to start something new, if you are co-op curious. It really hits all of those different needs. And you can register to, yes, Maddie and Abby went to the 51st, went before the 51st existed, came to Bread Jumpstart with us 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Now, what is time? But really, it, I think, provides a lot of vision and belief as people are getting projects off the ground or getting started. And it's a great team building activity. And we'll go to the next slide. Now I forget, Abby or Maddie mentioned that we provided great legal advice. It was not I providing any legal advice. I am not an attorney, but we have an attorney on staff, and we also partner with the amazing folks at Gilmore Condar Solidarity Economy Law Firm. So quarterly, we provide in collaboration with them, brief legal advice clinics. So if you are connected to a group that has legal questions, yeah, big shout out to Parag. But if you are someone who has part of a group that has a legal question, that could be an entity choice question, that could be a financing questions. Many things have an overlap with legal questions. You can fill out the contact us form at BCI and request a conversation, and we will get you set up and scheduled for a brief sort of legal advice clinic that will be meant to support you all in taking next steps. And we just want to say thank you. And we'll just show the last slide because we have, you can purchase the tote that has this image on it, and we love it. And I think I will close us with that quote, which was adopted from Grace Lee Boggs, where it says, "A new economy is possible, a new economy is necessary, and a new economy is happening." So really want to thank you all for being with us, and really, again, thank the team from the 51st, and really encourage you all to get and stay connected, because there's really powerful organizing happening in our region now, and people are really starting to catch the vision of what does it look like if our economy doesn't have to be organized the way that it is. So I just want to thank everybody so much for being with us, and we will talk to you soon.